So because we're actually back in the studio where I first met Amy and where we wrote Back to Black on, the first night that we met, it's actually funny. I wasn't even in this studio for about 15 years. And last year I was walking down the street on Amy's birthday. And I just thought, you know what? Like, let me just go up there, just even for sentimental reasons. I just want to remember what that room looked like where she sat with her nylon string guitar and play me some songs. Like, I think I wanted to just feel that energy. And so I buzzed up to the landlord and I said, I'd love to come up. It's, I don't know if you remember me. I used to rent the space on the 5th floor and, da-da-da-da-da. I was probably going on forever, some long-winded story. And he just goes, what? Do you want to rent the space again? And I was like, yeah, I want to rent the space again, whatever, to get in the door. So I came up here and I walked around and it was just, 6 months into the pandemic in New York. A lot of places had closed down and there was nobody in this space. And I just thought, wow, this space was so magic. I had such a great time in here, worked on so much great music. Amy, Daniel Merriweather, Rhymefest, my version album, things that I was very fond of that I thought, I'm going to take the space over again. So I came back in here and it's really amazing being back in this thing. I mean, New York just has an incredible energy, but this studio really does. So on the occasion of being back in this, I actually thought it would be really interesting to unearth the original demo of Back to Black, which I haven't listened to in 10 years. I've certainly never played it before. And we had to do some digging for this one. But this is, the first night by myself, I came up, with the piano that we went over, And then I wanted to come up with a rhythm track that reminded me of all these things that she loved, that she had played me. She played me the Shangri-Las. And like I was saying, I only knew how to sample and make beats up to that point. I had a drum kit, but I didn't really know how to play the drums. But I thought, okay, well, I could play a really simple pattern that just goes boom, tss, boom, boom, tss, boom, tss, boom, boom, tss, and put lots of reverb on it. But then actually when I got in front of the drums, I realized I wasn't even good enough to play that with my foot, the coordination. So I actually ended up having to play it on the floor tom. Boom, tss, boom, boom, tss, boom, tss, boom, boom, tss. So that's a great lesson there. I mean, listen, if there's something that, there's so many ways to get around. If there's some idea that you want to bring across that you feel like, well, I'm not good enough drummer to do that. There's always workarounds. You can always find something clever, some way to get your idea down. So, well, let's listen to that drum. So this is we'll play the piano first. So there you go, to start with. So this is what the piano sounded like, because really back in those days, before I had met the Dap Kings, before I worked with these amazing engineers like Jens, I really didn't quite know how to mic a piano. I think I was just doing it from just the most basic way that I thought. So if you listen to how the original piano sounds, this is what it sounds like. I mean, it's like barely karaoke level of sonic quality. So what I did was, I was like, okay, well, Amy's played me these old records and they sound cool and they're like dusty and this 60s vibe. So, okay, well, I have some plugins that can do that. So I found one plugin to make it distorted and another to put reverb on it. And then when you put those on, so you can always find cool plugins and things to make the sounds. They make every kind of plugin now. Whatever sound you're hearing in your head, even if you can't get that sound with the instrument, as long as you have the bulk, the soul of the performance, the sonics, you can find ways around. So yeah, I didn't know anything about recording to tape or gear or anything at that time, right? I just had like basic plugins that I knew what to do with. So here we go. So you've got, as I said, or. So I was like, okay, cool. That sounds more in the ballpark of those things that she was playing me. That sounds good. So then the drum parts. So I couldn't play the pattern that was in my head, boom, tss, boom, boom, tss, because I don't have that kind of foot coordination. So what I did was I took the beater, you know, the thing that plays the kick pedal off of the kick drum, and I just put it in my hand and I just played it, you know, like someone would play in a marching band. And I just played it because I knew that that's how I could get the pattern that I was hearing in my head. And then I put more of these plugins on to make it sound more, you know, dusty and dirty in a break, and like what I thought that Amy would want to hear. A little bit of spring reverb or plate reverb goes a very long way when you're trying to evoke some of the feeling of these old records. So what do we have? So we have the piano and the drums together. So I had probably been up till 6 in the morning working on this idea, trying to get all these things. And you know, when you have that idea that you're so excited about, you know, time just, you could be working 5-6 hours and it just, the time goes by like that because you're just so in the zone, and it's great. And when you're on those great occasions, when you're feeling that inspiration, just, it's the best, and you just stay in it. They also didn't have iPhones back then. So I played it for Amy. She came in the next day. I probably had slept 2 hours, and I was just like so zoned out. And she came in and she sat, and I said, hey, I made this thing last night. Let me know what you think. And I kind of hit the space bar. And I kind of looked back at her nervously, and she's like, yeah, I love it. And I really didn't know her, and I didn't know that her whole thing was quite, like, deadpan. And I was like, I don't know if she likes it, she's just being nice. And she said, no, that's what I want my whole album to sound like. So she went in the back room at the studio, this room right here, behind this curtain, with a little, probably like back in those days, we used to burn the instrumentals on a CD, and she put it in a Discman, put the headphones on, and came out and wrote all the lyrics in about an hour. And this is her with the vocal.
He left no time to regret, kept his dick wet with his same old safe bet. Me and my head high and my tears dry, yeah, on without my guy. Yo, we're back to what you know, so far removed from all that we went through. And I tread a troubled track. My odds are stacked. I go back to black. We never said goodbye with words. I died 100 days. You go back to her, and I go back to.
And I could be wrong, but I actually think it's a different lyric in the chorus. I think it's, in the album, it's, I died 1,000 times. And on this, it's, I died 100 deaths. Anyway, so, yeah, so she, you know, I had never been around anyone that talented before. I mean, she just went back and she wrote the vocals in an hour and just came back and we recorded it. And there's a track on here called Amy Guitar that I completely forgot was ever in here that's muted, but I guess she at one point, because she was a really good guitar player, I think she wanted to try some guitar on it. So, I mean, this is truly never been heard shit. Amy and her guitar, the Back to Black.
And I tread a troubled track. My odds are stacked. I go back to black.
And another thing that Amy really loved was the texture of this electric clavinet that I had, because I had it in the room when she was in there, and I played it, and she insisted that I put it in the song. And I happen to sometimes, definitely to a fault, think that if you're doing this kind of song, all the instruments should sound like a 60s kind of song from this era, you know? So she liked the sound of this electric harpsichord that was more, I don't know, 70s, and she sort of insisted that we put it in, and it was a great idea. And sometimes it's great when you're working with someone who challenges your ideas, because, I mean, especially if it's someone that's like a genius, like Amy, I mean, it's gonna usually probably be pretty great, but we put it in there, even though I thought it maybe wouldn't work or it wasn't the sound that was supposed to be in there, and it's this sound here.
100 days, you go back to, and I go back to.
Anyway, so that was one of Amy's great ideas that definitely pushed me out of my, production box, because we all have these rules that we think, okay, things are supposed to be like that, and you always need people to push you and kind of make you think about things. Sometimes you'll have that idea and you'll sit down and be like, you know what, let me try something that doesn't belong exactly in this rule book or this sandbox of what instruments I'm supposed to use on this kind of song. And then sometimes you'll need someone to challenge you. And I guarantee you, when you get challenged, your first instinct will be like, no, that's not how it's supposed to be done. I mean, I remember the first time Amy wrote that lyric, I died 1,000 deaths. I thought, like, wasn't it supposed to rhyme? She's like, what are you talking about? Like, that's a great lyric. Like, you need to be pushed out of your box sometimes, and everybody has these impulses as soon as somebody says something that's not what they believe is the best idea, to just instantly shut down and fight for your idea. But I guarantee you, it's always worth trying the ideas. When you're in the room with somebody super talented who you respect, like, always try out their ideas once, because there's nothing better than being wrong, because it's just going to make the song better.